This video will cover using Zoom for discussion sections and office hours. The information that I'm going to present is particularly relevant for teaching assistants in the College of Engineering at University of Delaware, although anyone else is welcome to view as well. So, as an instructor, as somebody teaching a discussion section or holding an office hour, you are going to use different Zoom functionality than you're using in your normal day-to-day Zoom meetings, whether they're team meetings or happy hours or whatever you're doing. You fundamentally will use some different functionality in the program. I find that it falls into two camps. The first camp is something called active learning techniques, right? So getting your participants in the meeting involved with the material that you're teaching. So the functionality that you're going to use there is going to be sharing your screen to show slides perhaps in PowerPoint, to show a worksheet, switching between share screen with PowerPoint slides and a document camera, also sharing screen with and without audio in case you're playing a video that has an audio component to it. So we'll cover all of those techniques. The second feature under active learning techniques is polling. So if you'd like to use a multiple choice question, let's say, and show a poll, so have people respond and then show those responses as a group back to the group, there is a polling feature in Zoom that is very useful. Also useful are participant reactions, so just simply saying, hey, are you with me? Give me the thumbs up. If you're with me, they can react on their screens and you can see how that's going. Also useful is the raised hand function, which we'll share as well. Another technique is participant chat. So what do you guys think about this particular phenomenon, right? And then asking people to respond in the chat to that. People who have questions for you. If there are any questions, please post those questions to the chat and I'll address them. Those are different active learning techniques that we will go over. Chat has two capabilities to it. Participants can chat with everybody, chat just with you, or chat with each other, and you can control all of that through Zoom. Last but certainly not least is probably the most complicated of all of the active learning strategies, which is holding a general session and then sending participants into separate breakout rooms where they can share screen with each other, where they can privately talk to each other or talk to each other on camera, and then calling them back into the larger meeting. So it's a way to break up your meetings and essentially do group work within a larger meeting setting. All right, so those are the active learning strategies that you will find yourself using as an instructor. I would say that these active learning strategies are most prevalent in discussion sections. So if you are holding a smaller group discussion section or a small lecture, okay, that is using a lot of active learning strategies, you're going to use a lot of these. You're going to use fewer of them in a large lecture setting. Breakout rooms in large lectures, there is a cap on the number of people that you can use in a breakout room. Things like sharing screen, polling, participant reactions, those can also work in large lectures, but there are a couple tips and tricks to manage that. But breakout rooms are usually something that once it gets above, I would say about 50 people, it becomes a little difficult to manage. All right, those are active learning strategies. The second functionality that you will use as an instructor is really around security. How are you going to make sure that only the people that you want to have in this meeting are there? We all know at this point about Zoom bombing. It really does happen, but it is really fairly simple to prevent. How can you also prevent maybe students from or participants from messaging each other when you don't want them messaging each other, sharing responses to, let's say, a quiz question or a clicker question, or taking over your screen, right? So things like that, there are ways to offer that level of security. If you're holding office hours and you're discussing sensitive information, you may want to do things like a waiting room, right? And then obviously it is always good to know, even though it is very rare to have to do this, how do you control muting and even sort of expelling participants that maybe aren't consistent with the values that you have in your session, right? So muting is fairly common, right? There are ways to control that so people aren't bringing in a lot of noise as they're entering the meeting. But I have had students who have done things like taken their computer into the bathroom with me, with them on screen, right? So things like that, you may want to just kick them out of the meeting. So we'll talk about how to do that too. Okay, so those are the two broad categories of additional Zoom functionality that you're going to need in your tool belt as an instructor, that is a teaching assistant, or if you're a professor watching this as well, those active learning strategies, and also this additional layer of security. Okay, I'm now going to show you, based on 4 different types of Zoom lessons that you could be doing, Zoom instruction, what types of security and features you may want to use in Zoom. This is a lot of information. I'm going to present it in table form. I do suggest that you maybe take a screenshot and look back at this information or replay this video so that you can make sure that you're checking these off. These are recommendations. They're not mandatory, but I do find them very helpful. Before we get into them, I want to mention one thing. There are two levels of controls in Zoom. There are account level settings and controls that will control all of the meetings that you set up under your account. And then there are meeting level controls that are specific to the meeting that you are starting. Okay, so let me start with the account level Zoom settings. Okay, and I will show you in Zoom actually how to set these settings. Okay, we'll flip over to Zoom in just a second. So at the account level, for things like, I've got 4 different meeting types that you could possibly have. Office hours, discussion sections. By discussion section, I mean a very active learning heavy section in which you are having students actually go and work in groups. So you may have breakout groups for your discussion section. Small group lecture, I'm talking maybe a lecture size of at most 50, but that's probably even pretty large, maybe 25. You're doing some active learning elements, but it's primarily delivering a lecture. And then large group lecture is like huge numbers, right? 50 plus all the way up to 300, 400 people, right? Closer to a webinar. All right, so private chat settings. This allows students, participants to talk to each other, okay, without your knowledge. So you won't see that content. For office hours, I recommend that that is off. There's really no reason for it to be on. Discussion sections, you've got a smaller group there. You might as well turn it on, right, so that they can correspond to each other internally. Same with small group lecture. Large group lecture, because there can be some dynamics that get a little weird in large group settings, particularly when people don't know each other. I recommend turning private chat off in those large group settings. Polls. Office hours, it doesn't really matter. You're not really taking polls at office hours, so leave it on, turn it off, doesn't matter. Discussion sections, you definitely want your polls on. Small and large group lecture, definitely want those polls on. Polls are probably one of the easier ways that you can get people to engage in your content. Meeting reactions. Again, office hours, it doesn't matter what that setting is. Discussion section, small group, and large group, I typically have it on. So I want people to be able to give me a thumbs up, give me a thumbs down, tell me that they need to leave the room momentarily, give me an applause, right, virtually, whatever it is, okay? Something to say very easily, hey, I'm with you or I'm not with you, slow down, speed up, thumbs up, right? So meeting reactions I tend to leave on consistently. Polls, meeting reactions, you might as well leave that functionality on. Same with breakout rooms. Again, you're not really using them in office hours, but you may use them in discussion section, large group, and small group lecture, so you might as well turn that on as well. Last but not least is screen sharing, the ability for you and you alone to do the screen sharing. I typically have host-only controls on screen sharing when I'm doing a large group lecture. That way, nobody can take over the controls. You do have to give them permission as the host in order to do that. So it's less likely to happen, but just for safety, I tend to turn on host-only screen sharing in large group settings. Okay, reminder again, these are broad strokes, but these settings, these 5 settings, are something that are going to be buried in the account level Zoom settings. So if you want something changed in between meetings, once you turn these in a particular direction, they apply to all meetings that are set up in your Zoom account. So if you change them back, they again apply to all meetings. So remember that as you're dealing with it. Meeting-specific Zoom settings, here they are, and these are pretty important, okay? These are settings that you can specify for each meeting that you're scheduling. For office hours, enable join before host. I typically have that off, but on in every other setting. So people can enter the meeting room, my participants can enter before me for everything except for my office hours, okay? Mute participants upon entry. This is really critical for, I would say, really any group size above maybe 4 or 5 people. People aren't that conscious of, especially new Zoom users, new students, on muting themselves, and there can be a lot of background noise, and it's hard to turn people off sometimes, so identify who's the source of the noise. So starting people off on the right foot and having them muted, mute people upon entry is a good way to go. Next is related to security, only authenticated users. I really, really recommend this in all instances, okay? Please note that if you are holding meetings with people outside of your own network, we're here at the University of Delaware, we're authenticating through our accounts which are linked to our email, which is udel.edu, okay? You would need to turn only authenticated users off in these instances. Actually, the default is off and you would turn it on. But I would recommend for anything that is class related, you turn this on so that people outside the university can't just Zoom bomb your meeting, right? It also is a level of accountability for the students. So the students, when they are coming in, you know their name, you know the account to which their session is linked, and if there are any issues related to either behavior or attendance, you can go back to their account. So I strongly recommend that. Password, I'm kind of hit or miss on password. I don't use it for office hours, discussion sections, or small group lecture. Sometimes large group lectures, if I want that added level of security that other students aren't passing around this meeting between each other. Usually the password is right there next to the login. So I do tend to turn it on for larger group lectures, but off for everything else. Breakout groups, okay? There are a couple different features that we'll dig into on this. You'll notice that breakout groups were both a system level setting and a meeting specific setting. You can control whether or not you have breakout room capability at the meeting level. So I typically turn on breakout group functionality as a default in my account level settings, and then my meeting specific settings, I'll toggle it on or off depending on if I'm going to use it. So in reality, most of the time that I'm using breakout groups is going to be in discussion sections. Definitely using them there, sometimes in small group lecture, but it really depends. I'm not going to run a breakout group in my office hours. I'm not going to run a breakout group in my large group lectures. Actually, breakout groups crash after 200 users. So thank you, Zoom. So really, you want to make sure that you've got it on just for your discussion sections. Alternate hosts, okay, so I strongly recommend that you have somebody else, you have a Zoom buddy with you, another teaching assistant or another instructor if you're a faculty member who's helping you in large group settings or in settings where you have a lot of active learning elements. Okay, that is a lot to manage in an online setting. So office hours, you don't need an alternative host. Small group lectures, you could probably manage that on your own. Discussion sections, and especially large group lectures, it's really hard to monitor the chat, to manage a breakout group. Maybe people are bouncing out of the breakout rooms and you need to reassign them. All of that is difficult to do if you don't have somebody else who's there helping you. So I typically have somebody else with me. That person I specify as an alternate host. I provide their email address. They come into the meeting with that host capability. Know that you can always give somebody in a meeting a co-host privilege, and you can actually turn over the host privileges to them if you want to as well. We'll talk about the difference between that. But just setting up a meeting with that alternate host in mind is also a good thing. Recording meeting, okay? On this issue, I want to be very specific that you should be recording. Anytime you are recording, make sure you're not recording to your local hard drive. These file sizes are huge, okay? Also, it tends to sometimes kick out as it's writing to your hard drive. Record the meeting to the cloud. This is going to be on Zoom servers, okay? And office hours, you don't want to be recording. Sometimes there's private information that's discussed there about grading. That should be off. It's off by default, and you actually have to turn it on, okay? But I typically have off for office hours, off for discussion sections, unless there's some reason for attendance purposes that I need to record, but I typically don't. Off for discussion section. If I need to record the information that I'm delivering live in a small or large group lecture, I would record it. Otherwise, I'm not, okay? So use that at your discretion. Okay, that's what I have to show you on the settings. We're now going to flip over to Zoom to show you how to do this. Okay, now we're going to work on some Zoom controls, setting those up the way that you'd like them for each of your meetings. When setting Zoom controls, I like to do this from the web app rather than from the installed app on your computer. So you may have installed Zoom locally. It has a much cleaner interface if it's locally installed, but you don't have all of the capabilities to manage your settings. So what I like to do when I'm setting up a meeting, at least for the first time, I like to do it in the web app, which is going to look like this. You want to go to udel.zoom.us and then sign in. It's going to ask you to credential as you're going in. Then what you're going to do is, for the first time that you come in, I find it helpful to just check my settings and make sure everything there looks the way I want it. So these are the Zoom level settings, the account level settings. Remember again that account level settings are going to apply to all of the meetings that you have scheduled and all meetings that you will schedule when the settings are a particular way. Okay, so these are default settings. And some of these you cannot turn on and off at the meeting level, so just be aware of that. All right, so some security stuff, waiting rooms. Okay, so obviously I use a waiting room in my office hours, so I would turn that back on. Right now it's off. Okay, passcodes, you can set these at the meeting level. Authenticated users, I'm allowing that option to be on. I can turn that off at the meeting level. All right. Video sharing, audio type, these are all defaults that I can change at the meeting level as well. Some things that you can't change at the meeting level, turning on and off chat and private chat. These two must be controlled at this account level. So I like to keep these on. And then obviously in certain situations, I'm going to turn off private chat before I start my meeting. Okay. Other things, co-host polling. Okay, so co-host is something that you can control during the meeting or before the meeting starts. Polling you cannot. So unless you have polling turned on, polling is not going to turn up as an option for you. So I like to leave this on by default. Even during my office hours, it's not something that I'm using. I just leave it on. That way when I have my other meetings and discussion sessions, whatever, that is automatically on. Okay, screen sharing. There are some options here. You as the host are going to have, you're going to have to give somebody permission to share their screen who is not a co-host or another host. So you really don't have to worry about this too much. You just need to make sure that screen sharing is on. It is on by default on your Zoom account, so just don't turn that off. Okay. Other things, meeting reactions, okay, unless you turn this guy on, and nonverbal feedback, these two are helpful. These give your participants some way of communicating back to you outside of the chat that they hear you, okay. Other things, breakout rooms, okay? Again, you want to make sure that this is turned on. I tend to leave it on by default. It's another feature that I am not using during, let's say, my office hours or my large classes, but it is always there and I just don't wind up using it. So in my default account settings, I typically have that on. I also have this guy checked, which says allow hosts to assign participants to breakout rooms when scheduling. What this does is it allows you at the time of the meeting to upload a particular file that will pre-assign participants to breakout rooms. This is super helpful if when you know going into a instructional session, let's say a discussion section, you want to have particular students in particular rooms. Let's say you're breaking them up by project group. You want to do that as much as possible, particularly for large section sizes. You want to do that ahead of time. I find personally that for meetings less than 10 people, I can usually make the breakout rooms on the fly, but for more than that, it really becomes cumbersome if you don't have them pre-scheduled. All right, other things are not as important. You can tell there's just a ton of options here in default, okay, in the account level settings. So you really don't have to play with anything else, but again, some of the important ones, we're turning on polling, turning on breakout rooms, okay, and turning on participant interactions, okay. All right. Now we're ready, now that we've got this set, we're ready to set up some meetings. So I'm going to go ahead and schedule a new meeting, and I'm going to call it, let's say, Zoom TA, Zoom Instructor Demo. Okay, demo for instructors on how to set up Zoom. Cool. All right, so when do I want to hold this meeting? Let's say I want to hold it tomorrow at 9 o'clock. You can always start the meeting before, okay, and it can always run longer than you've prescribed. So this doesn't matter that much, okay. If you want, you can make this a recurring meeting. So this is particularly helpful if you're holding office hours, once a week and you want it set up the same way, discussion sections, that sort of thing. This just ensures that once you have your settings correct, it's going to be duplicated, right? So let's say that this is actually going to be a discussion section. So I'm going to do it weekly, and I'm going to end it after 8 occurrences, okay? What this is going to do is it's going to give your participants one link that they go back to. So this is particularly useful if you want to hand over that Zoom link and put it on Canvas or something like that to announce to the class, hey, at this time I'm going to be in this room. Here's how you get into it. It's the same every week. Okay. Registration. You don't need to worry about this. Okay, I never use it. We're going to handle security issues by asking people to be only authenticated users. Security, you can put in a passcode if you want. It'll make one automatically for you. So maybe I just call this example. Okay, that's where you would set that. Again, I'm hit or miss on passcodes. I generally just use authenticated, make sure that everybody's authenticated to join the meeting, meaning they're joining from a UDEL email account. Here is where you can turn on the waiting room again if you want to do that. Because I had waiting room turned on, I can select that and have that going again. You can set it at the account level or you could set it here at the meeting level. All right, so for video, I generally like to automatically say that everybody is going to have video on. I like to see everybody, especially in my small group settings. If you want, you could turn participant video off. People wind up turning on their cameras on or off depending on their preference anyway. But I usually turn this on. I don't like people in class settings joining by telephone. That also can take away, basically they're dialing up for a phone number when they're doing this. So unless you know somebody needs to join by phone, I generally am going computer audio only. Okay, other important things. Here's where you can control things like enable join before host. Really important for meetings other than, let's say, office hours. Office hours, nobody needs to be in the room unless you are there, right? But otherwise, you can turn that on. Muting participants upon entry, super important for large meetings where you want to make sure that you reduce background noise. Here's where you do only authenticated users can join. So this is really the security feature that I like to turn on. Note that when you are doing this, though, if you have any meetings that you need to set up in other circumstances that involve people outside of our network, University of Delaware, udel.edu, they won't be able to join that meeting, okay? So make sure that, for classes, this is definitely necessary. You want people logging in. You want to know who they are, and this is going to prevent a certain degree of Zoom bombing, but outside of UD will not be able to join. So let's see. Recording the meeting, here's where you would do that. Okay, I want to show breakout rooms here. Well, actually, let me do that in just a second. Here's where I would add alternative hosts. I do recommend that if you are buddied up as a teaching assistant to cover a certain section, that you add your co-instructor with you here, and that only one of you is setting up these meetings. Okay, so one would set up the meeting in their Zoom account and put the other person as the alternative host. What this means is that this other person can start the meeting. Okay, they can take over controls for you if you have a connectivity issue. They are just there as a backup person as the host. So I'm going to say that Professor Malati, my co-instructor, is going to be my alternative host there. Okay, now I'm ready to show you Breakout Room Pre-Assign. What Breakout Room Pre-Assign does is it allows you to upload a CSV. Okay, and I have a CSV already prepared here, okay, which has example participants here, right? Obviously, it's my name mangled several different times. That would have these rooms. These people, when they join the meeting, are going to be they're going to be assigned already to these breakout rooms. So if you have like a 25-person class and it's made up of 5 groups of 5 teams with 5 teams with 5 people in it, you want the breakout rooms to be reflective of those teams, you would want to pre-assign these, right? You can also title the rooms whatever you want. Let me go ahead and open up that file. This is a CSV file, okay, so comma separated variable. I'm going to open it up with Microsoft Excel so we can read it. Okay, it's a very simple file, 2 columns, pre-assigned room name. It's going to read this line, so this needs to say the same, pre-assigned room name, then you're giving it the room name. Okay, so I could title that whatever I wanted, right? And then Jenny and Jenny B are going into room 1. Buckley and Buck Lee are going into room 2, okay, and these guys are going into room 3. So you can make this as long as you want, with an asterisk there. So we have found that as the number of participants gets closer to 200 individuals, which I don't think applies to anybody who's watching this video, that breakout rooms tend to crash. So, but you should be fine with breakout rooms up to about 10 breakout rooms with 5 participants, or I'm sorry, total size up to about 100. Okay, so you should be totally fine setting up those breakout rooms for any size discussion section that you're working with. Okay, so that's the file. Here is where you would upload it. Okay, and then these people would be automatically assigned when you go into the meeting. The next thing that we're going to show you actually is how to deal with that, or how to interact with people during the Zoom session and do some of those live active learning elements. Okay, so obviously here, you've got your meeting ID. This is what you're going to send to your participants along with the passcode that you've provided. For yourself, you can put this as a calendar event. When you're ready to start the meeting, you can just start the meeting from here. You could also start it from your, whoops, that is not what I wanted. Hi, everybody. You could start it from your meetings, right? So now it's showing up on my locally installed version of Zoom too. I could start it from here, right? Okay, so that's what I needed to show you on the web-based setup for your various meetings. All right, now we're live in a Zoom session. I myself am the host of the meeting. My co-instructor here, Professor Malati, I am going to make her the co-host. So notice how I'm doing this. I am over Professor Malati's window there, and I am making her the co-host. Okay, so she's going to have some controls as well as myself in managing this fantastic team of participants. So we have 6 students on the call with us. Few things I want to show you is, obviously, if you haven't found this before, this participants tab will show you who's in the meeting. Everybody joined the meeting before I did. This is a small group session, okay? So they came in and they were automatically muted. I'm going to actually ask Hayden to unmute himself and just say hello so you can see that in these controls a participant can unmute and remute. Okay, and then if I'm tired of Hayden or he says too much or whatever, I could mute him again there. So you have those controls. All right, I'm now going to do a screen share and I want to show you a couple things around this. Okay, so I'm going to do a screen share, and you'll notice that I've got various options. So I can screen share either my entire desktop, which is what I'm going to do, or a particular window in my desktop, the PowerPoint slides that I have open. Underneath, you'll also see that I've got options here to share computer sound. This is where it's going to be super important. I'm going to click share computer sound, and then I'm going to turn on some music for my participants because that's what I love doing. But if you do have a video clip that you want to show that has audio, it's going to be super important that you click this on, okay? There's also an option under advanced just to share the mic or computer sound, okay? So I'm going to share my desktop. Here it is. You can see my slides. I'll go ahead and I'll turn on some music, and I'm going to ask everybody to, let's see, what do we want? How about some sugar here? Can you guys give me the thumbs up on reactions if you can see? Yeah, some sweet tunes. All right, so that's how you share music. Enjoy. All right, the other thing I'm going to show you on share screen. So here, obviously, if I want to share out my slides, right? I've got my slides here. Don't respond to that poll yet, guys. I'll get you in a second. Okay, but I can share out my full slides. I also want to show you how to share out a document camera. Okay, so on my desktop here, I have a document camera plugged in. I'm going to go to advanced, and then I'm going to take content from second camera, and if the worlds have aligned, aha! There is my camera, upside down, of course. So I would need to flip that, but you get the sense. There's my document camera to share out. Okay, so that's another option. All right, we're now going to move on into an actual live slideshow that has a couple features that I'm asking my participants to engage in. So we're going to do polls and we're going to do reactions and chat. We've kind of already done reactions, giving me the thumbs up. So. That is something that, as I mentioned before, when I was going through the settings that you need to turn on in Zoom, turning on participant reactions is something that you're going to have to set on by default. So we'll focus on this one on poll and chat. So for my participants, if you could play along with me here, I am going to run through some slides. They are about walking, okay? So I'm going to open up a poll. So I've got a poll question here, folks. When do babies first start to walk? We'll see how much child development you know. Okay, so I'm going to launch the poll. Notice on your end, guys, you have to hit launch, and then people are going to click in. On the participant side, do you guys see the poll? Okay, So give me some answers. When did babies first start to walk, Zach Conroy? Is it A, 3 to 8 months, B, 9 to 18 months, or C, 19 to 30 months? How can you guys all be right? You're mechanical engineers. How do you know when babies walk? Somebody unmute. Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Okay, anyway, that is perfectly correct. So I'm going to end the poll, and I'm going to share my results out. So all of you, congratulations, you were all so right. It is 9 to 18 months. You're walking on average on a year, okay? Unless you're Zach Conroy and then you started running at 3 months old, okay? So anyway, I'm going to get rid of this polls, okay? Now, notice that under polls, another thing I showed you on setup was that I made that generic poll setup, so I don't have to write a custom poll question every time. I'm basically telling my users to respond to whatever I'm putting on the screen. That's another important function if you're using polls. Okay, my next thing is, how about this one, guys? How many steps should you be taking daily? I am going to ask you guys to respond in the chat. Okay, I'm going to go to my chat, and let's see what people have to say here. Whoops, you don't need to see Dr. Perry. Okay, sorry, I don't think my wife, we used to be babies. Thank you, Alex Bayer. Okay, M says, my Fitbit says 10,000. Bella, 10,000. Script is super active, at least at 12. That's 12 steps, Jacob. Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to respond bananas. Okay, Hayden, 10,000 is the generic answer. Absolutely. So actually the range is 7 to 10, so 10 is the high end of the range. The Fitbit is lying to you. 7 is on the low end. Fun fact, okay, in a lifetime, you walk enough to cross the United States 30 times. All right, so you can see, guys, here how I'm responding in the chat. You can also see how this would get away from you if you had, 100 participants in a session. So this is where having somebody like my co-host, Dr. Malati, who could also help to perhaps catch some of this and moderate and say, hey, Professor Buckley, I noticed this person said bananas. Let's kick them out of the meeting. Okay, that's all very important. All right, so we just went through how to do polls, how to do chat, and how to do reactions. From my participants, is this all super clear? Give me a reaction, thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways, if we're all clear on how to do this. Awesome. Okay, our next functionality, guys, is we are going to try out breakout rooms. Okay, so for this, I'm actually going to stop screen sharing, and I'm going to come back to this view, which is sort of like your master view. You can see everybody on screen. Okay, and breakout rooms, just a note here. Okay, breakout rooms is one functionality that only the host has. Only the host can control putting people in breakout rooms, taking them back out, pre-assigning them, all of that. So if I wanted to just deliver the content of my lecture, and Professor Malati, my co-instructor, was going to help me manage breakout rooms, I would want to give her the host privileges so she could control breakout rooms in that setting. Okay, so remember that. Right now, just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to control the breakout rooms, and we're going to send people off. I'll also show you what it looks like on the side of the host. Some of you may have been participants in breakout rooms, but what does it look like on the host side to do this? Okay, so you're going to go to breakout rooms. Again, with your Zoom settings, you have to turn this on for an individual meeting. Okay, there are multiple ways to do this. As I mentioned during the setup, right, you can pre-assign breakout rooms by uploading a CSV file, so a comma-separated variable file with student email addresses and what breakout room you're assigning them to. That works up to maybe 50 participants. Beyond that, we've had some difficulty. So you should be prepared at all times with your co-host to be able to do a quick fix to the breakout rooms. There are always going to be problems with breakout rooms. So in most of the situations as teaching assistants, you're going to want to put students into breakout rooms with their teammates that have already been pre-assigned. Okay, so you may want to have a roster handy so you can really quickly shuffle people into breakout rooms if the preloading doesn't work. I have found personally that preloading is a pain for meeting sizes less than 10 people. For over 10 people, it can save you a lot of time, but I've still found it pretty risky. So always have a backup plan with your breakout rooms. Okay, if you don't care how your breakout rooms are assigned, you can go ahead and have Zoom automatically shunt people off into breakout rooms. You can set the number of rooms, and then it's just going to divide up the population and create those rooms. I care how many are going to be in each of these rooms. Okay, so I'm going to create breakout rooms, and now you can see what comes up is I get to select who's going to be in each breakout room. So I'm going to take Alex and Hayden in the first one in breakout room number 2. I'm going to take Bella and Jacob, and in breakout room number 3, I'm going to go ahead and put Em and Zach, and I'm going to leave Professor Malati out of a breakout room with me. Okay, now when I open the rooms, what's going to happen is all of these beautiful people are going to be magically transported into an alternate reality, and I'm just going to be left with the fabulous Dr. Malati. So here we go. Bye, guys. I'll see you in a bit. Off they go. Okay. Breakout rooms are happening now. I don't know what's up with Em. She's kind of stuck. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time, okay? Professor Malati is not in a breakout room. This is kind of an optimal situation. You'd like your co-host to be able to, like you, enter breakout rooms, see what's going on, pull yourself back out, right? So you want a little help here. Professor Malati actually needs to be assigned to a breakout room in order to be able to go into the room and pull herself back out. So remember this about your co-host. As a co-host, you have difficulty. You have to physically be assigned to a room in order to start this whole process. Professor Malati right now on her side with the controls can't put herself in a breakout room. Okay, so I'm going to assign you, Professor Malati, to breakout room number 1. Go ahead. I'll see you later. Okay, now it's just me. What I want to do is a couple things. So I am going to visit some breakout rooms, but before I do that, I'm just going to let the people in the breakout rooms know that they should just stay in those rooms for a little bit longer. So I'm going to say another 2 minutes in breakout room. This is a broadcast feature, okay? So this puts a little strip across the top of their breakout room that just says it's an announcement from you, okay? This is the one way you have to really communicate to people, but it's a very brief announcement. Now I'm going to go see what's up with Professor Malati and who else is in here? Alex and Hayden. I'm going to join their breakout room, join breakout room number 1. Here I go. Note that it takes a little bit. All right. Hi guys, how are we doing in this fabulous breakout room? Is it weird and awkward? Love it. Okay, I'm going to leave just to show people I can leave. Thank you, Alex. Okay, I'm going to leave the breakout room. Watch this. Okay, so notice this. Okay, you have the power to hit the big red button and close the entire meeting. Don't do that. That is bad. Okay, so make sure that you are leaving the breakout room, not leaving the meeting or ending the meeting for all. If you leave the meeting, there is no longer a host. Actually, it goes to Professor Malati. So I'm just going to leave the breakout room here. All right, bye. Now I'm returning to the main session. It's just me. Okay. I'm ready to, I can check up on all of my breakout rooms, right? I can do that super easily. I am going to now close the breakout rooms, okay, and bring everybody back. So I'm going to close the breakout rooms. By default, I've set my closing time to be 10 seconds. Sometimes I think it starts you at 30 seconds. That's a bit long, but you're calling everybody back into the meeting. As they're being brought back into the meeting, note that they are on mute. This is a lovely feature, okay? I'm now going to ask them, let me go with a message to all. How were the breakout rooms? Respond in chat. There we go. All right. Lovely. Thanks, Hayden. Exciting. Okay. All right. So other 2 things I want to show you. I'm going to go over one more time host and co-host privileges. Again, you can list your co-hosts, your alternate hosts, on your setup, on your meeting setup, and I recommend doing that. So I would recommend in this instance myself listing Professor Malati as a co-host, so when she joins the meeting, she automatically has those privileges. Professor Malati and I are now going to trade off co-host and host privileges, so you can see what the settings look like on both sides. So what I'm going to do is I am going to give up all control, which is hard for me. I'm going to give it up and make Professor Malati the host of the meeting. When I do that, I become a participant. So at this point, you see my controls down at the bottom change to participant. So what Professor Malati is going to do now is make me a co-host. Go ahead and make me a co-host first, Professor Malati. You notice we're doing that by just clicking on these dots. Okay, now I am the co-host. I have all of the capability, so I can start a poll, okay? I can do all of that to support Professor Malati. I can monitor chat rooms, okay? I can go in and I can mute and unmute participants here, right? I can kick people out of the meeting if I need to. I'll show you that capability in a second. What I can't do, though, is manage the breakout rooms. So remember, again, only the host can manage the breakout rooms. So the way that I would set this up, if I were the one doing the lecturing in the discussion section, I would probably make Professor Malati the host so she can manage the breakouts while I'm teaching, and vice versa if we do it the other way, okay? All right, Professor Malati, actually I'll just leave you as, well, why don't you give me back the host for a sec, just in case I can't expel people. All right, we're gonna pretend like Jacob's script has been super duper bad. Okay, and yeah, he has, look at him, you can't even see his face, you know he's up to something bad. He's either cheating or there's something going on there, okay? So Jacob is going to be expelled from the meeting. So first off, you may, just general classroom management, you want to maybe say, hey, knock it off, warning. Okay, he's ignoring me like he does. So at this point, I'm going to say we're done. Okay, there may be instances, particularly, I'm just going to say it, particularly with the freshmen, okay, where you need to kick them out. All right, so Jacob, you are going to be removed. Okay, you have two options here. Let me also highlight this. You could put Jacob in a timeout. You could stick him in the never land purgatory of a waiting room and have a private discussion with him. Or you could just remove him. I'm not going to report Jacob. Report is sort of like the nuclear option. Let's not do that. Talk to one of us before you do that if you're a TA. Okay, nope, he's yeah, you're definitely getting kicked out. Okay, bye Jacob, bye. Now he's gone. Okay, so problem eliminated. Also, what can happen if I can have everybody please unmute themselves and make some background noise? Oh my God, that's so annoying, right? Okay, there's so much background. Oh, you're done. All of you are muted. You're still making noise, but I can't hear it. We're done. All right, there you go. Now you have all of the controls as an official Zoom god. Thank you for participating in this, watching this video. Hopefully it was helpful. Good luck managing all of the masses that we're asking you to manage. Okay, I'm going to stop recording now, guys. All right, some parting words for you guys as you head into your adventures instructing via Zoom. The first is to buddy up. I've stressed this a couple times. It's really important that you have a co-host for large sections, so when you're managing a lot of people, and or when you have a lot of active learning happening in your lessons. Let's say it's a discussion section and you've got some chat questions that you're going to ask, you've got some polls, you've got breakout rooms. Having a co-host there who can help you so that you can focus on just delivering the content is really important. Okay, second is to set expectations with the student participants. So prompt the students for how you'd like them to interact with you on Zoom. Also let them know what's not acceptable. Okay, so you'll be taking questions from raised hands, or you'd like them to unmute themselves and ask a question whenever they want. Okay, those types of things can really help to make your session go well, or honestly, if you don't set expectations, it can kind of go poorly the first time. You'll get the handle of it. Third tip is to be patient with yourself. This is hard. This is a hard thing to do. It's hard enough to sort of manage a class in person, but to do it remotely on new technology is pretty hard. So it's okay if it is not perfect and it takes a couple times for you to get the swing of things. I promise you from my own experience that this whole process will get a lot easier after a couple teaching sessions. You will feel a lot more comfortable delivering instruction on Zoom. So with that, I want to thank you guys for listening to this presentation on using Zoom for discussion sections and office hours. Good luck with the online semester.